for joining me. My name is Kate Thompson, and this is the latest episode of A Lesson in Real Estate. And today's topic is one that I think warrants attention because it is something that, though originally was meant to be for the good of the people, has over time, with its usage and understanding of what it is in various communities, has caused sort of an uproar in the way of real estate and community building. Some people look at it as a blessing. Some people look at it as a curse. But my goal today is to share with you just some information about it, give you a couple of resources where you can go and look for yourself to see how this particular thing is impacting your communities. And hopefully the tool can eventually at some point be used for its intended purpose, which was to actually help the community and the people who are actually living in the community as well. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started with today's topic. The discussion today is urban renewal. And a lot of us that have been around long enough to kind of understand what urban renewal is also know that at certain points in our history here in the US of A, urban renewal was also called Negro removal. And so, like I said, it's had its controversies over the years, and I'm hoping today just to share a little bit of information with you about it so that you can look for yourself to see whether it's had a positive or negative impact on your community. And if the impact is negative, I hope that the information that I'm sharing today lights a fire under you so that you can move in a way to work with your local officials to be able to turn it into a positive for the community overall. So what is urban renewal? Urban renewal is the strategic process to improve specific areas of a city that are poorly developed or underdeveloped or that are even run down. Urban renewal can be done for both high and low density areas depending on the focus in that area. Areas can have old deteriorated buildings and bad streets and utilities, for example, or the areas can lack streets and utilities altogether. So in simple words, the term urban renewal is used to refer to the general process of transferring the urban environment. So how does urban renewal come about in communities? That process can be a very simple one. It can actually be very complicated depending on, where you are in the country and what the process is for having such a thing take place in your community. It depends on how your local government is set up most of the time. But it can be defined as a process where private properties within a private designated area are first purchased by the municipal redevelopment authorities and later reconveyed to selected developers who devote them to certain other uses. So, for example, you may have an area in your community where there was once a strip mall, or there could be even a neighborhood where part of that neighborhood was on a street that was going to be repurposed for something else. If they deem those properties to not be valuable in terms of their condition, if they feel like the properties are just too dilapidated to put in the resources to renovate them and bring them back, then they would just tear those down and then leave that actually for the developers to do themselves. And so what that does is that displaces a lot of people who are living in those communities. And oftentimes the displacement has occurred historically because those people are promised by these private development companies that they are going to put back housing and that is going to be affordable for the people that once lived there. Historically, though, that has more often not been the case than it has been the case. And that is the reason why we have the term Negro removal, because the urban renewal projects often, especially when they first came about in the 60s and 70s, and even up through the 80s and 90s, they were projects that pushed out, mostly poor people and minorities, people of color, from their communities, and then they were not able to afford to come back to those communities. So urban renewal, in essence, goes hand in hand with the term gentrification. And so we'll talk about that a little bit later. But in terms of urban renewal, it has impacted historically communities, like I said, that are low income and historically areas that are primarily occupied by people of color. And until 1970, displaced owners only received compensation as specified in the amendment to the Constitution. However, this measure of compensation only covered a fair market value of a property and skipped a lot of incidental losses such as moving expenses, loss due to favorable financing, and several other business losses such as a decrease in the goodwill of the business. And then in the year 1970, the state governments and federal governments enacted the Uniform Relocation Association Act that provides some compensation for these losses. However, the compensation provided oftentimes wasn't sufficient enough to help those people that were displaced by these urban renewal projects to land on their feet. The urban renewal process is also carried out in rural areas, and in those areas the process is known as village renewal. However, it does not practice the same process of moving people out. So there is a slight difference. Usually we find that people in rural areas there's an even distribution. So there's people that are considered minority, and then there are people who are not. And so in those rural areas, they take a little bit of a different approach to how they accomplish the urban renewal. But the process, while it's different, the idea behind it is just the same, and it still does displace a lot of individuals who can not afford necessarily to move to a different area and still keep the standard of living that they have at least. It usually turns out to be an even more detrimental situation for them. So now, like I said, there are people who advocate for urban renewal, and then there are those who advocate against it. And so I thought it would be, a good idea to, if I'm going to walk this line and not necessarily provide my personal opinion, to have some things that people deem as benefits for urban renewal, as well as some of the things that people say are challenges to the idea of urban renewal that need to still be resolved. So some benefits of urban renewal are the preservation of a country's history. A city can capitalize its rich history by removing blighted structures and remodeling dilapidated buildings and homes in the neighborhood. This step has helped many cities bring back its tourism dollars into their economies, as well because tourists love to visit these historical places. There is also the argument that urban renewal provides a clearance for slums, and this is one of the things that they tout as a benefit. Urban renewal helps in eliminating slums and creates new interest throughout the neighborhood. With cities being renewed, it has been noted that the slum areas have visibly reduced, thus making the place look more valuable. Reduction in crime. So urban renewal is also a component that is used to explain a reduction in crime in areas that have gone through the process of urban renewal. It has successfully helped, according to different sources, in eliminating crime, gathering spots and it's also done good. It's also been assisting in providing ways to keep those kinds of spots from reoccurring. Improved housing stock with the development of projects like one project called Rocket Landing. You can Google that. It's a neighborhood that's contemporary development, which has helped create partnerships amongst the neighboring localities so that it involves some kind of creative architecture. So it has urban renewal does improve the housing stock. While it does do that, it could be argued that it may not necessarily be the best thing for that community, because the people who are hoping to come back to those places are oftentimes not able to afford the new housing stock. So while that is touted as a benefit, it can still be a challenge to those people who are hoping to move back to those areas. The economic growth and economic vibrancy can also be something that's noticed with time, with the construction of new renewable projects, such as, building new hotels, improving already existing buildings, building new restaurants, bringing new tourism opportunities and things like that to the forefront for the area. Some challenges for urban renewal, like I said, are also quite evident. Some people are not always ready to move from their, property, probably because they own it outright already and they don't want to, take the time to start over with a new mortgage and, getting acclimated to a new area. And like I said, a lot of people have just not been able to afford to do such things. So in certain instances, property has been seized by way of eminent domain, which is another topic that I've talked about in the past. That has pros and cons, and people who advocate for and against it. So seize the property of someone, and if it's seized in an improper manner, it could cause them issues, and it could cause the community issues as well. Not planning properly for how these properties are going to be used or repurposed. That's another thing. Locally here where I live, I did see that happen. An entire neighborhood was pretty much wiped out. And there was the expectation that there was going to be new business coming there, and that business never arrived. Those people actually were forced out of their properties through eminent domain, and the lots now sit vacant. And at once it was a thriving community, and the people were good neighbors to one another. There was commerce surrounding the neighborhood that has since moved on because the people who were once there supporting that no longer exist. And so that is one of the side effects, the negative side effects of proper planning that we have to look out for. And then it can be very expensive. So urban renewal and, finding the resources to do all these things with new buildings and new roads and things like that can get super expensive. And so we want to be careful that we're not causing our cities a strain by offering this option when it really can't fully be supported and it's not a viable solution for the community. As I stated before, urban renewal is the precursor to gentrification, because they'll tell us that they're going to provide affordable housing and things of that nature. And I'm not saying that in every case that hasn't been the case, but there's several cases out there where you can do your own research and determine that lots of people were not treated fairly during the process of urban renewal, and that is a fact. And cases can be found all over this country where that's so. And there are signs that gentrification is coming to your neighborhood that you might want to look out for. And hopefully that will get you more involved in the activities in your neighborhood and what's coming, so that you can see if it's going to actually be a benefit to the community, or if it's going to be a detriment. Certain things like bike lanes, for example, are usually a sign that gentrification and urban renewal is coming to your area. I hate to say it, but there's a famous coffee brand, the most famous coffee brand in America, I think right now, that if you see one of those pop up in your neighborhood, you're probably on the cusp of experiencing some sort of urban renewal or, community gentrification. There's other things like when they start to, expand roads, widen roads, beautify streets, things of that nature. When you see those things happening, those are usually things that signify that there's going to be a change coming to the area. And so the other thing that I want to say about that is there are instances where when we're out looking for real estate, most of us want to purchase something that's ready, already for move-in. We want to live in certain areas. We think schools, where the schools are good, if we're a family that has kids. We all have different reasons for wanting to be where we are, but most of the time it's because we want something new. And I'm here to tell you that there are so many properties in our country that hold history, that are well built, that have just been left to sit for various different reasons. And everybody can't live in the same community. Everybody can't be all lumped up together in the same space, because that's just not feasible. And so what we need to do is start reimagining and re-envisioning these neighborhoods for what they could be for those people who really can't afford to get the biggest and brightest and newest and shiniest thing. I have talked to lots of young people. And what I mean by young people, I mean young adults. I don't know which generation they fall in, millennial, Gen Z, or whatever, but plenty of young people who are frustrated with the idea that they are not able to realize the American dream because of all of the things that the generations before them have done to make real estate so high. Interest rates and things like that are a big barrier for them. And so one of the ways that we can help these young people move forward is to repurpose property that is already there and do so in a way that is affordable for them. Because if we don't do that, if we allow big private companies to come in and continue to suck up our neighborhoods and use the land in ways that may not be in the best interest of us in the community, then it's really hard to go back and get changes made to correct those issues once we've allowed them to go into place. So I urge everyone to look at your regulatory boards at the local level. Look at what your mayor and your local government are doing in terms of providing stable housing for your communities, and in terms of how they are addressing blight in your community, so that you can make sure that they're doing things that are going to be truly helpful and have a truly positive impact, instead of them doing things that are just going to line the pockets of a few and make just a few more people more wealthy. We need communities that have all sorts of services in them, not just housing. We need communities that have, places where we can get safe and affordable food. We need healthcare services in the communities. We need schools. We need good quality education and all of those things. And our tax dollars should not be used to push us out of the places that we call home, so that someone else can take up shop in those places for ill-gotten purposes. And so, with that being said, I hope that I have given you guys something to think about. I strongly urge that you go and look at some of the things that urban renewal has caused in our communities. A lot of the progress for our interstates, like the roads that we drive to go across country to go to visit different states, the interstate system. A lot of that was a result of, it was built as a result of this process of urban renewal. And it displaced so many people. And right now in the area that I live in, we're having a new highway built that's actually going to stretch from Mexico to Canada. And, that's great to have one highway to go that goes from, one country to another and have us sandwiched in between. But we really need to make sure that the highway is not going to displace people that really need to be in these places like it did in the past with the other interstate system. And we also need to make sure that when people are telling us they are building affordable houses, that we understand exactly what that means and who the property is affordable for. So yeah, you get that information from your local officials. There's all sorts of ways that you can interact with the local officials locally where I am, and I hope that's the case for you as well. But if not, just Google urban renewal and your city. And if there's anything coming about as a result of that, you should be able to, identify those things pretty quickly by just having that type of Google search. And so with that being said, I thank you guys so much for tuning in for this short message today about urban renewal. I hope that I've given you guys a new term that you can go and look up, and I strongly urge you to really take the time to check out how the process of urban renewal has impacted your city. And I would love if you guys would just give me a call or send me a message to let me know what you think about the impact that it's had on your city and what you're willing to do in order to see it change. So thank you so much for joining me. My name is Kate Thompson again, and this has been A Lesson in Real Estate. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Bye now.